But anyway, that's enough about that stuff. What's been going on that's interesting? I suppose the big combat sports announcement, because we like to take it outside MMA on the Boicast, the big combat sports announcement was, I was going to say Rizin, but it isn't really Rizin. Sakakibara, who is a clown, basically. I mean, that guy has got so much goodwill off of Pride. It's ridiculous. Rizin is now nearly as old as Pride, and it's not come even close to as good as Pride. I mean, they've been sort of hamstrung by the pandemic, making it almost impossible to bring in foreign fighters, but even before the pandemic, the last few Rizins weren't great. They had like a couple of world-class talents, and they just all left. In fact, that was basically completed this week by Tafik Musayev signing with Bellator. Good signing for Bellator. Immediately going to dethrone Patricky, I imagine, as the lightweight champion. But yeah, it's interesting. Someone replied to me on Twitter being like, well, they lost Tafik, but their featherweight and bantamweight are still stacked. And I was like, stacked? ? And then they listed a load of names in those divisions like Shintaro and people like that. I thought Shintaro was retired already. But, there's a difference between being like having multiple Kyoji Horiguchis, world-class fighters, would be stacked. What you've actually got there is a division where, because Kyoji Horiguchi is now no longer taking part in those cards and being rented out to Bellator while remaining a rising fighter, you've got a more evenly matched division. That doesn't make it stacked. Every rising card is just a load of dudes with losing records fighting each other. And you're like, if you all only fight each other, how have you all got losing records? But anyway, the Tafik Musayev news is kind of interesting, but Roberto Satoshi is still there, and he is legitimately a world-class talent. But the interesting news was that it was coming up to New Year's Eve. New Year's Eve is the big Rizin event. Rizin is supposed to announce a big fight for Tenshin. Naturally, in the weeks up to this, everyone's like, oh my god, they're going to do it, guys. They're going to do Tenshin Nasukawa versus Takeru, which is the fight that everyone has wanted for, 4 or 5 years. I mean, Tenshin's actually a pretty recent phenomenon in kickboxing. I think it's only been 3 or 4 years probably that people have just been wild about the idea of Takeru versus Tenshin. Actually, no, wasn't he on the first Rizin card? So he's probably 5 or 6 years now. But anyway, everyone was getting ready. Everyone was losing their minds. There were these photos that Takeru was posting that were clearly part of a photo shoot to hype something, but obviously didn't contain his opponent or whatever. And people were speculating like mad, but everyone was also like, don't get too excited. You've been burned here before. And then Sakakibara comes out days before Rizin New Year's Eve event and goes, Tenshin Nasukawa will be fighting Takeru. Everyone's like, yes! And he goes, in June. And he says, not for Rizin. And also, for Rizin, he's going to be boxing Takanori Gomi with spinning back fists. And there we go. Fucking Rizin stay winning. Rizin's New Year's Eve main event was announcing Tenshin versus Takeru. So, I mean, yeah, it's an awesome fight. No one can shit on that fight. It's just so funny how it got done. And also just Rizin generally. I mean, if you're not familiar, Tenshin Nasukawa hates MMA. He took 4 MMA fights against absolute bums that Rizin picked out for him. He won them all, and he was still like, I fucking hate MMA. And it was kind of like what one championship were trying to do with Gordon Ryan, where the guy had already said, I don't want to compete in MMA. I will compete for you in my sport if you promote it. And the promotion just kept trying to obfuscate and vaguely be like, well, maybe. I remember watching the Rizin intern doing question and answers on Reddit and just sort of trying to skirt around the fact that Tenshin fucking hates MMA. But anyway, that's the Sakakibara genius. This guy who founded and then bombed Pride. And then they did Dream without him, which was far better than Rizin. So it proved that he wasn't a necessary part. But his genius move was to try and save Japanese MMA by using a kickboxer who fucking hates MMA. And then if you look at because I believe Rizin's linked with Rise, which is a kickboxing promotion that Tenshin takes a lot of fights for. He also fights, what's their name? No Kick, No Life? Is that the name of the promotion? Can't remember. But he fights for Japanese kickboxing promotions. And in those fights, he fights very good kickboxers. I don't want to make anyone think that I'm dismissing Tenshin's ability. As a kickboxer, he is one of the very best in the world. But in Rizin, it was always the case that they'd find him just the stupidest possible matchup. So he had 4 MMA fights against absolute jobbers. Fair enough, he doesn't fight MMA. But then they did a kickboxing tournament, and if it is linked with Rise, they've got loads of great kickboxers under contract. But they found 2 guys with, again, losing records. One guy who had a letway record that no one could confirm, but even in his big himself up estimate, he lost half the fights. And Tenshin fought 2 guys who just had no idea what they were doing in the same night in kickboxing. Or then they'd find kickboxers to fight. They'd find old MMA fighters to fight him in kickboxing. And then the highlight, of course, was just Tenshin's going to boxing now, because again, this Takeru fight is supposed to be his last kickboxing match. But then they're like, oh, Tenshin's going to boxing now, so we'll have some weird boxing matches. So they give him exhibitions, which are 3. He's going to fight 3 guys in a night, but it's only 2 2-minute rounds each. So it's not even really a workout. And then one of them's 42-year-old Hideo Takeru. Actually, I think he's 46 now. But Hideo Takeru, who does absolutely fine against Tenshin Nasukawa. And then, again, on New Year's Eve this year, he had a boxing match against Takanori Gomi, who is a ghost. Takanori Gomi is the only person to lose a grappling match to Kazushi Sakuraba. That's how washed he is. And Gomi manages to give him the fight of his life in a boxing match. Granted, Gomi's a bit bigger, but still, this guy's supposed to be off to boxing to become Japan's superstar. Anyway, the important point is we're getting Takeru versus Tenshin. I'm going to be hyping that up tons, but it is happening in June. Oh, actually, on the subject of further rise in hilarity, Carrier fan on Twitter, who is great for stuff in Japanese. He's a big kickboxing fan too, but he tweets a lot of interesting Japanese articles and gives you the sort of gist of them. But there was an article come out recently that 2 guys tried to work their fight on the Rise in New Year's Eve show, and Sakakibara came out and every press conference he does, he looks like a sad salaryman who's just bowing to you and going, "I'm so sorry." But he comes out and he says, ideally we'd fire both these guys, but actually it turns out there's nothing in the contract that strictly prohibits them from working a match. It's just great. Amazing. What an amazing oversight that you didn't put in the contract. The fight has to be real. Actually, there's been a couple of great Floyd Mayweather stories come out this week. One, he's going to fight another exhibition on a top of a helipad, I think on the Burj Khalifa? Showing my ignorance here. I only know the word Khalifa. Let's not even go into that. But yeah, that's his plan. He's going to Dubai. He's going to do something stupid. They're going to pay him far too much money, which actually links in beautifully with Rizin, because they paid him upwards of 10 million. This is the thing. I joked about Sakakibara being a crap promoter, and someone was like, "Oh yeah, get a load of jack slag. Oh, you couldn't do it. Blah blah blah. Sakakibara's doing his best, so on." And you're no, he paid Floyd Mayweather $10 million to do nothing for his brand, to humiliate his top kickboxer or whatever you would call Tenshin, his biggest star. That $10 million, if you just put that towards Takeru versus Tenshin and then hyped the shit out of it, you would have done more for your business in the long term. You can say that more people saw the Floyd Mayweather thing because people looked it up, but only because of how badly Tenshin Nasukawa got murked. It didn't help in any way with views or buy rates or anything else in the long term, I can't imagine. Because it matters when people see your guy get absolutely jobbed out. But anyway, so Floyd's having this multi-million-dollar exhibition on a helipad. But then this week, in fact this morning, it comes out that he is going to be sued by someone. Let me pull up the Bloomberg piece. Jack, you trust Bloomberg? No, I don't trust anyone, but I am looking up the news story, and that's the way where I saw it. Kim Kardashian and Floyd Mayweather Jr. were sued for allegedly scamming investors in a cryptocurrency called Ethereum Max. This is a story that has everything that I love. People taking celebrity crypto advice, people believing that Floyd Mayweather is out for their best interest, people believing that because Floyd Mayweather has a lot of money, everything he tells you to do will get you rich. And then also like the amazing type of crypto bro. Like if you're a crypto bro and then you lose all your money and you go, live by the sword, die by the sword. I respect that. Being a crypto bro and being like, yeah, actually, all money's a scam. And the strength of crypto is that it's unregulated and not backed by, a federal government or whatever. And then the moment that you lose your money, you go to the federal government being, please regulate this. Give me my money back. I want to sue Floyd Mayweather. Then, yeah, you're just a big bitch. But then just the other day, I was saying, isn't it mad how BKFC managed to kill a guy 2 months ago with in a mismatch, and it didn't even break their stride. And someone said, like, someone came in to give the usual, like, he was a grown man, he knew what he was signing up to, blah, blah, blah. And my first reaction is like, gross. But then, that is the same. If I'm happy with people getting owned because they invested in shit crypto on Floyd Mayweather or Kim Kardashian's say so, I don't know which one's more embarrassing. Then I suppose I have to be fine with people getting into fights and getting killed because they signed up to the fight themselves. And then the other big announcement this week was that Colby Covington versus Jorge Masvidal is going to headline UFC Hold On 272. Honestly, seems like this has been put out ahead of them actually signing a real contract. I would not get your hopes up for this. I can see this like being a lot of talk and then not happening. And sad for Leon Edwards, who's again missing out on like a big fight.